The early 1950s crackled with new energy. Across North America, young people crowded around radios and jukeboxes, craving something raw, something real. From the cool streets of Toronto came four young men who would soon bring that craving to life. They weren't chasing fame, they were chasing perfection. And in doing so, they shaped an entire decade of music. The Diamonds, Dave Somerville, Ted Kowalski, Phil Levitt, and Bill Reed, didn't begin as superstars. They were four ambitious individuals, each drawn to the alchemy of vocal harmony, determined to find magic in unison. It all started with happenstance and an ear for excellence. Somerville, working as a sound engineer for the CBC, stumbled upon a group of students practicing a cappella. Recognizing both their potential and their shortcomings, he offered guidance. When their original lead vocalist bailed on a church basement Christmas show, Somerville stepped in. The crowd erupted, and the Diamonds were born not in a studio or a label boardroom, but in the humble glow of a local parish stage. They practiced relentlessly. For 18 months they refined their blend, morning, noon, and night. Their sound was built with care, bolstered by barbershop quartets, shaped by the gospel heat of Detroit's Revelaires, and polished by Somerville's insistence on precision. They weren't trying to be cool, they were trying to be great, and that obsession with refinement would soon take them places they only dreamed of. A trip to New York, fueled by little more than belief and ambition, led to a tie for first place on Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. Their prize, a week-long guest slot on Godfrey's show, led to a brief Coral Records contract. Coral released 4 tracks, including Black Denim Trousers and Motorcycle Boots, penned by the rising duo Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. It hinted at what the group could do with edgy material, though real success still lingered out of reach. Enter Bill Randall. The Cleveland radio DJ, already known for boosting acts like the Crew Cuts, saw something in the quartet. He made a call, one that landed the Diamonds a recording deal with Mercury Records, a home that would help them reach their peak. The timing was no accident. The mid-1950s marked a moment of cultural shift. Rock and roll was gathering force, R&B was bubbling through the cracks of mainstream radio, and crossover artists were beginning to shape new frontiers. The Diamonds were white, clean-cut, and Canadian, yet their hearts beat for the music born in black neighborhoods, smoky bars, and gospel halls. They understood the emotional pull behind songs like "Why Do Fools Fall in Love" and "The Church Bells May Ring," and they carried that emotion into versions palatable to segregated airwaves. Whether praised or criticized, they gave these songs new pathways. Then came the explosion. In 1957, they released Little Darlin'. Originally recorded by the Gladiolas and written by Maurice Williams, the song was already full of character, but the Diamonds injected it with theatrical timing, rhythmic precision, and an unforgettable baritone bass spoken word section delivered by Somerville. The result was a sensation. Little Darlin' reached number 2 on the U.S. charts and became an anthem for a generation. Audiences couldn't get enough. They spun the record until it cracked. Riding that wave, the group followed up with another thunderbolt, The Stroll. This wasn't just a song. It launched a dance craze, turning every high school gym and roller rink into a rhythmic highway of sidestepping teens. Their original numbers began to rival their covers. No longer just interpreters, the Diamonds became architects of the era's sound. They weren't just a studio group. Their charisma on television lit up living rooms across the country. They sang on American Bandstand, charmed viewers on The Perry Como Show, and cracked wise on The Steve Allen Show. With every appearance, they drew fans not just to their music, but to their personalities. Sharp suits, synchronized movements, and crystal-clear vocals made them both accessible and mesmerizing. Even Hollywood took notice. They were featured in The Big Beat and lent their voices to soundtracks including Cathy O. But behind the scenes, the pressures of the spotlight took their toll. As the 1950s drew to a close, the original members began to drift. Levitt stepped away in 1958, followed by Kowalski and Reed. Their replacements, Mike Douglas, Evan Fisher, and John Felton, stepped into large shoes. Though capable, they struggled to keep pace with changing trends. Somerville, the final original voice, departed in 1961, choosing to reinvent himself as a folk singer under the name David Troy. From that point on, the Diamonds became a brand more than a fixed identity. Different configurations of the group carried the torch. Some played Las Vegas lounges. Others worked the nostalgia circuit. At one point, rival factions of the Diamonds toured concurrently, causing confusion among fans and igniting legal disputes over who had the right to use the name. A court would later rule that Gary Owen's lineup, a skilled ensemble that included Bob Duncan and Steve Smith, would maintain control. One of the most colorful figures during the band's second wind was Glenn Stetson. Joining in 1968, Stetson reinvigorated the act with his forceful voice and magnetic stage energy. He helped propel the Diamonds through the 1970s and 80s, even pushing them onto the Country Music Network, where they achieved minor hits with songs like Just a Little Bit and Two Kinds of Women. In 1986, Stetson and Dick Malono opened Little Darlin's Rock and Roll Palace near Disney World, a nostalgic hotspot that offered new life to many acts of the 50s. It was more than a venue. It became a haven for a fading generation of stars, a place where the glow of old glory was not just remembered, but reignited. Despite these efforts, time marched on. John Felton died in a plane crash in 1982. Stetson, after receiving a heart transplant in 2000, passed away in 2003. Kowalski died of heart disease in 2010. Mike Douglas was lost to a car accident in 2012. Somerville, the voice that gave Little Darlin' its sly gravitas, died in 2015. With each passing, the original foundation of the Diamonds faded, but their work remained engraved in vinyl and memory. And yet, the music would not stay in the past. PBS came calling in the early 2000s. Doo-Wop 51 and Magic Moments, the best of 50s pop, featured the original Diamonds in rare reunions that introduced their songs to younger audiences and rekindled old affections. Their harmonies, still tight, still warm, poured through TV speakers and reminded millions why the group mattered. The Diamonds never had the rebel sheen of Elvis, the anthemic pull of Buddy Holly, or the writing pen of Chuck Berry, but they held a mirror up to R&B and polished it for suburban America. They offered kids in Kansas a version of Harlem's heart. Their ability to take complex vocal structures and make them digestible without losing their edge showed an uncommon musical intelligence. In many ways, they were translators of a language that America wasn't yet ready to fully embrace. They walked a tightrope. On one side, praise for popularizing rhythm and blues melodies. On the other, critique for capitalizing on the work of black artists. The Diamonds weren't alone in this. The industry was built on such patterns. But they occupied a front row in the cultural push and pull of the era. Their story is also one of evolution. What began as a Canadian vocal experiment turned into a group that navigated drastic shifts in musical taste, from barbershop to doo-wop, from sock hop to sock hop hops, to Vegas stages, from vinyl to digital. They played with orchestras, rocked nightclubs, headlined county fairs, and cruised ocean liners. Their catalog echoed through American Graffiti, Happy Days, and generations of compilation albums. By the time they were inducted into the vocal group and doo-wop halls of fame, the honor felt overdue. The Diamonds' name continues today, though none of the original Mercury-era members remain. Gary Owens, Jeff Dolan, Adam David Marino, and Michael Lawrence carry the torch, performing to crowds who sing along as if it were still 1957. For many it is. That's the thing about those harmonies. They don't age, they linger. Among the most poignant aspects of their legacy is how easily one forgets that the original Diamonds were just 4 young men from Toronto. There was no master plan, just ambition, sweat, and a little magic. Somerville worked behind the scenes as a CBC engineer. Kowalski and Levitt were students. Reed worked for the phone company. They weren't groomed in showbiz, they clawed their way into it. Their personal lives remained mostly private. Some went back to school, some raised families. Others, like Somerville, kept performing in different guises. They met joy and heartbreak, success and tragedy, applause and silence. But their bond was forged in harmony, and it endured. There's something immortal in the echo of Little Darlin', not because it changed the world, but because it captured a moment when 4 voices could do something unforgettable, not by outshouting the chaos, but by rising above it together.